Rita Fleeter, it's you and the senorita. Whooper blowing up the tweeter, cause it's me up in the speaker. Back in the mama seat, top down like a player. And the sound up in your ears, it is the dopest rhyme sayer. Running game like a cheater, I'm balling like they're a cheater. Complete on the
So, State of the Union address happened last night. Did either of you watch it? I'm here with super producer of The Stars, Barry Funkhauser. Also, Sam Firestein is in today to regale us with another one of his brilliant stories. This time, his story of a true-to-life encounter with the Thin White Duke, David Bowie himself. But before we get into all of that, you guys watched the State of the Union address yesterday?
No.
I DVR'd it.
I saw a picture of Obama before his first State of the Union and his last State of the Union, like side by side, and his
significantly grayer, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Time, man, time.
Being president seems stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld when he had Obama on? It came out like 2 weeks ago. It was obviously a really good get for something like an internet show like Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, even if it is Jerry Seinfeld. It was a bit of a momentous one. Did you guys see that?
I DVR'd it.
I saw it. It's good.
But I got to say, somebody, I don't remember who, tweeted out a great line about that, and they said it should be a lot harder to book the president for podcasts and like internet TV shows than
you know he was on Maron's podcast as well.
Right.
He was on
That's
Mark Maron's podcast.
He was on Maron's podcast, and he's on Seinfeld's.
Do you think he'll have his own podcast after presidency? Presidentcast.org.
President.
I could totally. Well, I mean, look, you know, he's in the home stretch, and I think really, if there's one thing that Obama's presidency has proved that he's good at, it's being clever on camera and on the radio and in interviews. He's definitely the president with the most natural rapier wit that we've ever had, I believe, and I think that's what he wants to do. He's ready to hand it over to somebody else and just go be funny and clever elsewhere. Like that, I think that's what he wants to do. He wants to spend his time hanging out with the Marons and the Seinfelds of this world. But the thing that stuck with me the most with that was when Seinfeld was like, how many world leaders that you've met are just absolutely crazy? Like, how many of them are just nuts? And he was like, yeah, it's a lot of them. A lot of them, you know, shouldn't even be given the remote control to the television set, let alone an opportunity to have a finger on a button that could fry all of us. He was like, yeah, they're all nuts. And it just it reinforces my belief that anybody, I mean, you look at Obama at State of the Union address number 1, looking healthy and spry, and you look at him now, looking like he's 2 years younger than God, and you go, wow, that's a tough gig. Anybody who thinks this is the gig for them, A, that they have the audacity to think they can do it, and B, that they want to do it, I think you have to be crazy to want to be president of the United States.
Yeah, but at the same time, what people forget is that, I mean, he's been in this job 8 years now, or 7 years, and it's a heavy job. Obviously, it carries a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, which will age you. But he's also now 54 years old. He's going to look older. Everybody always says, oh, they look so much older at the end of their presidency. Yeah, it's 8 years later. I look a lot older 8 years later than I did. And it's like, my God, my horribly, horribly stressful, life of sitting home and writing all day long is just aging the hell out of me. It's about as scientific as, let's say, 1/2 of the country out there and the 5,000-year-old dinosaur bones.
I think, though, if you look at, State of the Union address number 2, you're going to see a leap that is more significant than most people's natural aging process. You ever hear that I think it was Doug Stanhope who said, you ever look in the mirror in the morning and go, that can't be right?
Every day.
I liked his take on. It was interesting because the first words on everybody's lips in the political arena at the moment seem to be something to do with jihad terrorism. He actually left it later. He got to the idea of terrorism a little bit later on in the speech, but it made me think about my own it made me think about my own experience with terrorism growing up in England, where it's a completely different type of terrorism for the most part. Not now, but it was then. I remember not being allowed to go into London on the train to do my sort of like high school museum visit that we were required to do every single month because the IRA was blowing stuff up. It was car bomb season, so we didn't have to do the gallery visit, which, the car bombs were terrible, but I like not having to do the extra homework. Comedian Trevor Noah kind of hit the nail on the head, too.
Terrorism is not a race, it's an act. It has evolved over time. Yes, right now we're dealing with extremism, Islamic terror in some parts of the world. But if you go to other parts of the world and ask them what a terrorist is, they'll show you a different face. You go to England 20 years ago and you said, well, what was a terrorist? They show you a drunk Irishman. Right? I didn't need to say drunk. I could have just said Irishman. There was a time when Nelson Mandela was labeled a terrorist. Like, terrorism is an act. It's not a face. People say these things. Well, these Muslims, you got to admit, there's an awful lot of them. Awful lot of them doing the same thing. You're like, yeah. But you know who's not a terrorist? Most Muslims. Yeah. Most Muslims are not terrorists. I'm not even Muslim, but it gets to me because I'm like, most Muslim people are not terrorists. You know how you know this? Because we're still alive. Yeah. They've had ample opportunity to take us out, people. There's 1 billion Muslim people on the planet. They've had every chance. They could have killed us using those falafels they sell us after midnight when we come out of the club. They could have wiped us all out. But they killer kebabs.
I know I've eaten some of those late night Middle Eastern treats after coming out of a club, and I think I've had the experience of falafel jihad going on in my gut once or twice before. Win $1,000 cash. Text in a keyword that you're going to hear every single hour, top of the hour from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. right here on Real Radio 104.1. Sam Firestein's story of the Thin White Duke next. Wow. Yeah.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio.
Every day you're going and working, running that rat race and that pace and that place will leave a bad taste for anyone, everyone working day after day. So buddy, I gotta say, for you, there's gotta be a better way, yeah. And you do what they told ya, company man, feel it, a mindless little soldier. How can you live like that and maintain your composure before it's begun? Your life's already freaking over, yeah. I do what I want, when I want, how I want.
So David Bowie's longtime producer, Tony Visconti, who helped him give us some of Bowie's best-known albums, like Young Americans, Heroes, and the like. He actually talked about Bowie's passing on Facebook and kind of gave it a critical thumbs up. His death, he said, was no different from his life, a work of art. Right after that, Visconti basically gave us a blow-by-blow account for how to listen to the new Bowie album, Black Star, which he called a parting gift by saying, I knew for a year this was the way it would be. I wasn't, however, prepared for it. And everybody's been sharing stories of how Bowie has impacted their life. You wake up one morning and your entire news feed on absolutely every form of social media, on every form of media there is, on TV, on radio, everywhere you look, everywhere you listen, it's Bowie and people telling stories of Bowie and what he meant to them. Here's the thing, though. We are joined by a guy that actually did some work with Bowie, and we thought for that reason it would be a real treat to have superhuman storyteller extraordinaire Sam Firestein on the show and have him regale us with a tale of the time he worked with David Bowie. You ready, Sam?
Next break.
Really?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. It's too long for this one.
Really? Is it? I thought we agreed second break. I did the emotional setuck and everything. All right,
I thought
we can
the
talk
second
about
break was longer. I guess I thought the second break was a long break.
Well, fuck it.
Maybe we should just do it then.
Well, do we have time or not? Because
Go ahead and do it. Jeez,
no,
just do it.
No, I don't want it to be.
your head? You think when whales get older, they have less control over their blowhole? They're just in the middle of a normal conversation. What do you say? You and I grab some plankton. Excuse me. This is so embarrassing. I was just in the Indian Ocean and my stomach really can't handle that. The old whale geography diarrhea joke. Coming in handy. You always hear number one killer of whales, mankind. You know, as if there's tons of competition. Let's take a look at the leaderboard of whale killers. Still number one, mankind. Number two, the pelican with a machine gun. And a distant third, the lion on a jet ski. Back to you, Bill.
So, I guess if we're going to get into, Sam's David Bowie story next, I actually found out something really interesting about Bowie. Bowie was very, very well off. He did just fine, thank you very much, in terms of getting out there and making cash. But as with everything, he was kind of an innovator. He was kind of someone that did things differently than absolutely everybody else, even in his financial life. He left his family close to $200 million. His family's going to miss him. Financially, they're going to be very well looked after. But do you know what he did to build a lot of that fortune? Did you hear about this? Do you know what interesting financial precipice Bowie walked out on, as he walked out on the artistic precipices as well? Either of you? Either?
I've never.
He sold what became known as Bowie bonds.
What are those?
It's true. All right.
Did he sell?
Stay with me on this one. Yeah. He sold Bowie bonds. Anyone want to take a guess as to what one of those might be?
Ticket to the World, because didn't he have a song called "Man Who Sold the World"?
Was he selling stock in his catalog?
Well, no. In 1997, he basically sold off 10 years worth of royalties for his first 25 albums. Like, this is a guy that has made, like, his body of work was a huge one. I think the Black Star, the final Bowie album, I think it was album number 27 or 28. Like, he was a prolific individual. And what he did was he sold off 10 years worth of royalties for his first 25 albums in exchange for $55 million up front. It's more complicated than that, and I don't super understand a lot of financial stuff because I work in radio, but it was a revolutionary concept at the time. A couple of other artists copied it, but nobody really does it anymore because music sales are so much lower than they were back then. But yeah, he was an innovator in many ways, not least of which was apparently financially. He came up with a concept of a celebrity bond, where it's basically commercial debt security issued by a holder of fame-based intellectual property rights to receive money up front from investors on behalf of the bond issuer and their celebrity clients. It's an interesting one, right? Have you? You guys are both all Hollywood. You've grown up in Hollywood. Have you ever heard of anybody else doing anything like that?
They actually started trying to do that last year with athletes, where athletes were selling futures against their contracts that people could invest in, pay them for money, pay them against their contract. It was some kind of odd scheme, but I think the running back for the Houston Texans did it, and a couple of others, and it went nowhere. But people have been trying to do this.
Well, I will look into selling off AD futures in the break. I'm assuming it'll go nowhere. And then we'll listen to Sam's David Bowie story.
About 10 with puppies in my face, and I gotta join the human race. Time for a yawn and a stretch and a walk, you see.
Like most kids from a privileged white upper-middle-class suburban background, for a significant portion of his childhood, he was pretty convinced he was down. AD on the radio.
Yeah, oh, let's go. Talking that mess, better act like you know. Oh, let's go tonight. Walk away, punk, yeah, bitch. That's right, I know this. You're nothing but a punk, bitch. You're nothing but a punk, bitch. So walk away, yeah, yeah.
Alrighty then, Funkhauser.
Yeah.
Do we now have enough time for Sam's David Bowie story?
Yes.
Okay. Sam,
Yes, sir.
you being the only person in this room who worked with, let me try pronouncing this again, the Thin White Duke, you being the only person that worked with David
Ziggy.
Bowie.
Just call him Ziggy.
All right. Please regale us with your tale of working with David Bowie.
Okay, so it was May 1993, and I was standing in a park in Burbank working on an AT&T commercial for their Perestroika campaign. And you remember Perestroika, right? It was...
Actually, no.
You don't remember Perestroika? When the wall
No.
fell and everybody... It was, just think of it this way. It's like the Arab Spring for communists. Right?
Sorry. I'm familiar with the concept of Perestroika. I just don't remember it being part of an AT&T campaign.
Well, really, what does the West do best? Then take the revolutionary and the freedoms and the wall falling down and repackage it as a great long distance plan for immigrants. Because, and really, we did. We had and what is more American than baseball, right? And immigrants. And we had a bunch of Russians who had never, ever seen a baseball before trying to play the game, because nothing says freedom like watching immigrants take line drives like to the chest and the face. I mean, we saw one ball just pop up, hit a guy in the neck, all for the chance to be on television, right? I mean, welcome to America. So it's like while I'm in the middle of this nonsense that I got the phone call. Actually, I didn't get the phone call. What I got was my pager started buzzing because, again, it was 1993. So I returned the phone call, and I hear, when I call back, I hear, "Oh, Sam, it's Bridget." Now, Bridget was South African, but I can't do accents, so cut me some slack. And she goes,
You know how...
please go. Go right ahead.
You know how Jim Jeffries describes, the Australian comic Jim Jeffries describes a South African accent?
No, how does he do it?
He says, "Picture my accent, but punching a black person." Go on.
Okay, so picture me right now watching Jim Jeffries punching a black person. So she goes, "Sam, it's Bridget. A huge job just awarded yesterday, and we shoot in 2 days. Like, are you available? I need you. And the thing was, like, I liked Bridget a lot. Like, she was great, but she worked for the worst company ever. It was a bunch of these expat South Africans who, like, all production is abusive. But these guys, like, they just kind of like excelled at the art of it. Their abuse went to 11. It was awful. And I hated turning down work, but there was no way I was working for these guys again. And I told her, I said, "Bridget, I would love to work with you, but I just did 100+ hours on AT&T. And on Monday I start prepping Mazda. I can't. I have to get some sleep." And she says, "Would it make a difference if I said it was David Bowie playing live at Hollywood Center?" And I go, "Ugh, really? Really?" And she goes, "His album is coming out this week." And it was Black Tie, White Noise. And he decided not to tour, but they needed to do a big promotional push for it. So he was doing this big, special, long-form video. And she goes, "I need you, please." And she said, and then she just put the knife in my gut, and she said, "Imagine it like a private David Bowie concert." And I just told her, I said, "I hate you. I hate you with every fiber of my body." And she got really excited and goes, "Oh, that's excellent. So you'll do it?" You know, because it's like, of course I'm going to do it, right? My body was already shutting down. I was so exhausted. But there was one time I was hanging out in front of, a couple years earlier, I was hanging out in front of the Troubadour talking to Martika. Do you remember Martika? She was famous for about 15 seconds back in the late 80s. And this big, lumbering, drunk dude wandered up on us, and he just goes, beer and rock and roll. Aerosmith's coming to town. Once in a lifetime opportunity." And I heeded those words. And the thing was, I'd worked with Aerosmith. I'd worked on the Janie's Got a Gun video. I'd sat and had dinner with the three guys in the band nobody cares about. Really nice dudes. So I was good on Aerosmith. But like he said, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So instead of sleeping, instead of like letting my body rest, there I was, 6 a.m. at Hollywood Center Studios. And I was only a production assistant, but, you know, when you're a coordinator like Bridget was, you need good people around you, especially with a nightmare job like this. And it was a massive nightmare job. And she'd hired anybody she could. And so we had some knuckleheads on the production staff, too. Like, there was this one PA that we were standing there, and we're all introducing ourselves. And he goes, you know, and I'm like, I'm Sam. She goes, I'm Bridget on this. And he goes, I'm Shark. And we're like, excuse me? We're like, Shark? And he goes, Shark. And we got it, like, right there. It was, don't ask again. Like, he was the guy, you ask again and it's going to be trouble. So we just left Shark alone to be Shark, and Shark was Shark. And then there was another kid there, this South African kid who worked in a print shop. He was like a friend of a friend. He'd never been on set. So we were kind of short-staffed. And so we're there, and Bridget starts explaining. She goes, oh, it's going to be very, very special. We're shooting 2 songs against the White Psych. Now, a White Psych is a cyclorama. It's a big swooping white backdrop. You've seen them 1,000 times. There is nothing special about it. And then she says, and David has created his own stage. He's had his very own stage built for him. And we're going to shoot the rest of the songs against that with the band, and Nile Rodgers will be here. It's going to be very, very special. And when you're thinking about Bowie, right? Like, I'd seen Bowie before, sort of. I'd gone to the Glass Spider tour a few years earlier, and I didn't really get to see the concert because it was at a baseball stadium, and we sat so far back, like in the upper decks at the other end of the stadium, that it was kind of like watching a concert movie from like 6 blocks away. But the production value, you could tell, was huge. And so you go and you think about Bowie and everything he's done. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be like an incredible stage that he built. Not just like some risers and like a curtain, which is exactly what it was when it came in later that day. It was just some risers and a curtain, and it meant nothing, but they were all going crazy for it, going, he's taking it to Leno, he's taking it to the top of the pops, he's taking it with him everywhere. And it's like, big deal, this sucks. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for that. So this day, wholly uneventful. It's just 18 hours of prep, because that's what you get when you work in music videos, an 18-hour day. If you're lucky, it's only 18 hours. And the only really big thing that happened that day was after 8 hours, I heard this commotion at the production table. I look over and I see Shark, and he's going, what do you mean I'm not getting overtime after 8 hours? And Bridget had to explain to him that no production assistant gets overtime, because back then labor laws didn't apply. I mean, they did technically, but try enforcing them. And he looks at her and he goes, I get overtime. And she goes, I'm sorry, but we don't pay overtime to production assistants. No one does. And he looks at her and says, but I get overtime. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't. And he goes, that's okay, but my time is worth this to me. I mean, this guy had great self-esteem, and he shook her hand and thanked her very much, and he left. And we're all standing there going, wow, that was kind of awesome. And we were all a little envious of him, because I still had 10 hours left to work. And then I went home, I got 4 hours of sleep, I'm back the next day, and they've replaced Shark now with a guy we'll call Jersey Mike, who was thoroughly worthless, but he walked around like he was supervising everybody, and he had convinced the little South African PA kid who'd never worked before. He had him following him around with a big VHS video camera. And he was having him videotape everything that he did that day, and he was going to send this videotape back home to his family to impress his family with what, you know, his big job in Hollywood was. And he became one of those guys, like, we're all standing there, we're just laughing at him, because he was doing, like, he had this over-exaggerated sense of self, right? And we're watching him go, because as a production assistant, you're cleaning up trash, you're helping the grips, you're a grunt. But he's making it like, you know, it's the director and Bowie and then this guy. And it was pretty funny. And I was hanging out with some of the camera guys because I worked with them a lot and they were my friends. And he comes up and he goes, yeah, what do you guys need? What do you guys need? We'll take care of it. And he's got the video camera on him. And so one of the camera guys just looks up and he goes, we haven't gotten the f-stops yet. Can you find out where the hell the f-stops are? And I'm like, oh, yeah, dude, we never got them from Kodak. Tell Bridget you got to go to Kodak and pick up the box of f-stops. We need this desperately. And so he's like, right, got it. And he goes up to the production table and he starts getting into it with Bridget, and the video camera's on him. And she just starts laughing. And she's laughing at his face, and then he just like turns and starts glaring at us. Because the thing about an f-stop is, it's elbow grease. It's a setting on the camera. It's just a little dial setting on the camera. There's no such thing as a box, but that's what you get when you bring your own documentary crew and you're a PA. So Bowie shows up, right? This is what we're all here for. Bowie gets there at noon, starts walking around, gets introduced to some of the crew. Everybody's, fawning over him. He's tall. He looks exquisite. He's in this great pair of slacks, and he's got this red turtleneck on. And I'm just staring at the guy. I'm like, my God, look at him. Because he really, man, it's everybody likes to go say this about rock stars or big celebrities. Oh, they're just like us. They're just everyday people like us. No, they're not. When you stand next to one, especially somebody like Bowie, you realize there's a big reason why they're Bowie and no one else is. And it's just a fact. So it's pretty uneventful. Again, we're just getting the stage and everything built, and Bowie's up in the dressing room area, and eventually it's like it's time to bring Bowie down to set. So I go up. Bowie's meeting with the director up in the dressing rooms, and they're having like an intense chat, and they're discussing the camera angles and how things will be done, and because this is what you have to do. And I go, excuse me, we're ready to take you guys to set. They go, okay, great. And I radio down to the ADs and say, we're walking. So we come down, and it's me and Bowie and the director, and then everybody, all the crew and everyone there. And they're all staring, kind of looking without trying to look at us. And we walk up, and I have to stand next to them because in case they actually need something or say something, then there has to be somebody there to do it. And the director starts explaining to Bowie, he goes, okay, so here, and we're standing by all the risers and the curtain in that part of the stage, and he says, we're going to shoot you here, and we'll do this, and they start discussing camera angles, and Bowie's like, where will the band be, and I'll be here, and then for this song, I want to do this, and it's great, right? They're going into it. And then they walk up to the like where the white cyc is, but it's hidden behind a big black curtain, right? And the director goes, now, David, behind this curtain is the biggest cyclorama in all of Hollywood. David goes, that's great. And he goes, in it we have painted it the most brilliant shade of white. It is just like this swooping, long, just it's like this grand vista of the most striking shade of white you have ever seen. And Bowie's really into it, right? And he's just leaning in, and the director goes, David, are you ready to see this? This is the largest, most grandest cyclorama in all of Hollywood. And David's got his hand on his chin, and he just looks at him and goes, show me. And the director goes, open the curtains. And a couple of grips rip the curtains open, and David looks at it, and he goes, fan-fucking-tastic, man. And I, behind him, I throw my arms up, and I go, yes! I mean, they never heard me or saw it. It was like a silent version of that, but it was, oh, my God. And I looked over to one of the ADs who was standing there, and his eyes were wide, and he just whispers to me, he goes, oh, my God, that was amazing. And then about an hour later, we started shooting. And I'll tell you this, Bowie did everything. We shot 2 songs on the white cyc, and he did his interpretive dance thing, and he did his creepy dance thing, and then he did his super cool dance thing, and then we shot him with the band, and it was amazing to watch this guy do what he did. He did not play live. It was all lip sync. They had to cut that part out, but it was still incredible. And I'll tell you, it was brutal. I worked 40 hours in 2 days on this show. But for 5 of those hours, I got to stand 10 feet away from Bowie while he performed. And I'll tell you what, it was fan-fucking worth it, man.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a party better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a party better than me.
So if you are just joining us, we've been entertained for the last 10, 15 minutes or so by super storyteller Sam Firestein, who we've had on the show a number of times, but today he was good enough to share with us the story of the time he got to work with David Bowie, next to David Bowie, in the presence of David Bowie. And if you missed that for some reason, please go back and check it out on the podcast, because it was truly incredible. So he really, really was an otherworldly type guy. He really sort of like, he had that thing that you hear about people having that makes you go, this clearly a rock star.
He was a rock. He was in a room full of rock stars. He was a rock star.
Wow.
It was one of those things. I mean, you saw it right on all of the social media feeds the last few days, right? Where it was he was the one guy everybody could agree upon. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts all in a row, nothing else breaking up the stream, all about Bowie. I've never seen anyone pull the world together like that, at least in the little echo chamber that I live in on social media. And it was quite stunning. And yeah, and to be around him, it's like there's tons of rock stars out there, but there's very, very few like icons like that. And he's one of a handful. And it was incredible to be there right next to him.
I can imagine, and I'm envious, not only because you got to have that experience of working with Bowie, but I'm envious because I've never seen that. I've always heard about it. Like, I've spent my entire life in entertainment. Like, who lights up rooms? They're rock stars. There used to be people at record labels, and it was their job. Now, people have downsized significantly, and from what I understand, this gig doesn't work anymore. But there used to be people at record labels. It was their job to identify whether or not someone had star quality. Did they light up the room adequately when they walked into it? And like, record deals hinged on this in some instances. I knew more than one record label had a person, and nobody really knew exactly what they did. They were basically there to judge a person's star quality or lack thereof. And I'd always heard of this. I've always heard of people having star quality, and I don't know, like through work, through having been in a band and been out on the road, and then being in radio and having it be your job to sort of like, hang and interview folks in this situation. I have yet to come across that where I've actually met someone and been like, wow, they're larger than life. They're a big deal. That this is a rock star. Like, it's never happened to me. So I'm envious that you got to have your mind blown in that respect, and blown by David Bowie, no less. Have you ever met anybody else that would do that? You too, Funkhauser? You've been working around the fleas and ticks of rock and roll for a long time. Anyone ever had that effect on you?
Me? Yeah, all the time.
He works with a lot of fancy ladies.
I do. Yes, I do.
I think they have a different effect on him. I'll tell you, though, it happens. I was at the, I don't know where you were that night, but the night I was at the Matrix 3 premiere. You remember the Matrix movies?
I never actually watched them. That's on my list of stuff that I need to catch up on. Is it on Netflix? Because everybody was like all taken with it, and I was like,
The first one's great. The rest, don't bother.
Well, also, it got to the point where, like, I'd missed them in the theaters, and, you didn't want to watch a movie like that, which was supposed to be this cinematic experience, like, at home on TV, having DVR'd it and fast-forwarding through the commercials or whatever the hell the case may be. Now, I think we're far enough away from those movies coming out where the special effects are no longer all that special, so I think I could watch it on TV and not feel like I was missing out on too much, but
you could probably
I never wanted
create
to watch
the entire movie of The Matrix now on an app on your phone, so... Right. But I was at the Matrix 3 premiere, and I knew one of the special effects directors on it, and I was talking with him, and then and we were just hanging out, chatting, and then Keanu wandered up and started chatting with us because he'd just spent like 2 or 3 years working with the guy, and he knew him very well, and so they were friends. And I had this very awkward moment of standing there with Keanu, and you got it, man. It's like, just subtly, and he wasn't putting on any kind of show at all. He was not like that kind of guy, but you could just see it, like the star quality just radiated out of him. And then Will Smith walks up because Will Smith's wife is in the movie. And then Bruce, the guy that I knew, kind of turns away, and then I'm just left, and it's me, it's Will Smith, and Keanu Reeves all chatting, and the two of them are talking, and they don't know each other, so it's kind of awkward. And then I'm like this this blemish on these otherwise like two just like supernovas, and neither of them, I mean, but it's like, again, it's like just bright sun is blowing out of these guys, like they are just shining bright, and you just got it, like why it was it was completely intangible, and then this like troglodyte monster little beast is like standing there between them with really nothing to say, and you know, it's
were you watching them have a conversation, or were you part of the conversation?
It's kind of both. Like they weren't having the best conversation because they really didn't know each other, and Will was like congratulating him on the movie and saying like how great that was, and Keanu being awkward was just kind of like, thanks man, I really appreciate it. And they were chatting, and they were both kind of aware that I was there because I'd been involved in a conversation with Keanu, but nobody really knew. None of us knew each other, and it was very awkward, and it was really obvious like who the two biggest stars in the world were and who wasn't. It was it's kind of, you know, like a bit of a setup there.
It's very interesting. My one brush with any kind of Hollywood stardom was when I did like a press junket, and it was a number one movie, and I don't even remember the name of it. It was some sort of like mythology movie, not like Spartacus, not whatever the hell the case may be. Mickey Rourke was in it, and the guy that played Superman, and I don't know, a couple other people that have only been in humongous hit movies, and I just not my speed, so I didn't really know who they were. I got the junket, I asked the questions, I did the appropriate social media posts, and I went home. But my final part of the junket was rather an interesting one, where I had to interview Mickey Rourke, and this is after he'd come back, after he'd been the wrestler, and It got awkward for any number of reasons, not least of which is I go in to do the interview, and he's like, "Oh no, not another interview! You told me the last one was the last one," and it went progressively worse from there. And I'll tell you how next.
It's not how you use it. You gave it a shot. You tried your best. Your best just sucked without enough. So hang it up. Just give it up. It's time somebody let you know that you will never be good enough. You will never be one of us. You will never be good enough. You know why?
Now, someone who everybody wants to punch in the face. AD on the radio.
So, before I launch into my what it was like to interview Mickey Rourke's story, Sam, you've been in and around Hollywood as a producer and a director and a writer for years and years. Have you ever crossed paths with him? You ever worked with him on anything, or had cause to encounter him?
Mickey Rourke?
Yeah.
Once when we were both arrested and we were in the same drunk tank. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say, wow, this story is already so much better than mine will ever be.
No, I've never, ever come across him, but I did look up the movie that you were just referencing.
Was it Immortals?
It was Immortals, and
right.
It was directed by Tarsem, who I have hung out with, and you would know him from directing such music video favorites as REM's Losing My Religion.
He seemed like a nice guy. I had to interview him for a little bit, too. He seemed like a nice individual. He seemed like an all right guy. And the whole experience was kind of cool. But the thing was, like, my last interview is Mickey Rourke. I get a one-on-one with Mickey Rourke. And I'm waiting to go in. They're like, okay, Mickey, you got one more. And he was like, no! You told me the last one was the last one. I was like, well, already, we're off to a flying start. And he's like, F it. Okay, fine. Let me just go to the bathroom first. And so, like, Mickey Rourke's in the bathroom. And Mickey Rourke's in the bathroom. I'm standing in the hotel room because basically what they do is they kind of turn a hotel into a place where you get a bunch of interviews done. And I'm standing in his hotel room. I hear a flush from the bathroom. And he walks out. What I did not hear was the telltale sign of water running. Now, yeah. Which I took to mean, rightly so.
You mean no
I believe
sink
that,
running? No sink?
Yeah. No water was running. Like, the flush happened, there was no water from a sink running, meaning Mickey Rourke didn't wash his hands. He's not a clean individual. And the PA standing there, I was like, is he a handshaker? And she's like, yeah, why? I was like, because he didn't wash his hands after going to the bathroom. She's like, what do you want me to do about it? I was like, I don't know. So I go, hey, shall we do this interview? He's like, yeah, sure, and extends his hand. And I'm just like, oh, God. I mean, this is not only just a dirty hand. This is Mickey Rourke's dirty hand, and this guy has had a bit of a colorful past. I'm just going to have to be very, very careful after shaking his hand not to rub my eyes or touch my hand to my face. Basically, keep my arm extended at all times until I get an opportunity to wash it. Mickey Rourke is an interesting guy. He's a fascinating individual. He just had his big comeback in The Wrestler, and I'm stoked to do the interview, and that's cool. But I have the screaming heebie-jeebies. I'm a hypochondriac at the best of times and a germaphobe, and so I'm just there with my hand outstretched across the table, trying to look as casual as possible in my absolute desire to keep it nowhere near my face. And we get talking, and he is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And I figure, you know what? He's got a real soft spot for dogs. I've got a soft spot for dogs. He seems to be chewing up interviewers and spitting them out. Let's talk about dogs for a second. And he was like, nah, let's talk about something that a name for a part of the female anatomy that rhymes with wussy. I was like, fantastic. Okay. And then he just sort of trails off, and Mickey Rourke has had a considerable amount of work done. He's had a considerable amount of work done, and I don't know exactly where the bulk of that work has gone in, but he looks kind of like somebody wearing a rubber Mickey Rourke mask, which photographs great and looks fantastic in the movie. He's scary as all hell. The movie's actually, for that sort of thing, not all that bad, but in person, it's distractingly plastic looking. So Mickey Rourke, I'm looking at him, trying to figure out where he's had, what's happened, and I couldn't be sure, but I think he's had some follicle repair done. I think he's had sort of like hair added to his head at some stage in the game. I'm not entirely positive, but I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden, I think that I was right in my guess that he was. I was right in my guess that he'd had some little work done on the old hairline there, because he starts looking at my hair and he goes, "You have great hair." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." He's like, "I wish I had your hair." I was like, what coulda, shoulda, woulda. But thank you very much. And at the time, it's kind of punk rocked out with streaks of blue and stuff in it. And he's like, I mean, it's really fantastic hair. I'm like, all right, we don't have to talk about my hair anymore in this unbelievably progressively awkward interview. Not necessary. And he goes, I mean, really, just look at it. And he leans in, and the same hand that shook my hand that I was so concerned about being anywhere near my face, like he's about to kiss me, goes into my hair, and he's almost massaging my scalp and feeling my hair. And to this day, I feel unclean thanks to Mickey Rourke, and that is my one brush with Hollywood stardom. So I've yet to really run into somebody that makes me go, ooh, this person is clearly better than I am. Like with Mickey Rourke, it was like I now need a bath. He was great in the film though. It was good stuff.
Did you ask him like if he'd ever seen the Seinfeld episode where Jerry's peeing next to the girl's father and he zips up and leaves the bathroom? Did you bring that up, or was that going through your head?
No, sheer terror was going through my head, because it was like, it was kind of a big deal. I wasn't, I wasn't the established ratings winner that I am now in radio. I think I got this job. I got this opportunity to go to Hollywood and interview movie stars because somebody else didn't want it or couldn't take it or what have you.
You should have just gone all in, man, and just grabbed his hands, pulled them out of your hair, and just kissed his fingers.
Oh, see, no. No, it was just that's like hepatitis on a stick is what it is. But yeah, it was like this big opportunity to go like to Hollywood and interview movie stars and all this sort of stuff, and you get put up in the Four Seasons, and it's super fancy, and it was a lot of fun, and it was super cool, and it was definitely spelled out to me by the company that, hey, this is your shot, don't blow it if you want to be considered for other things like this. So I just had to deal with the crushing awkwardness of this. And there's pictures somewhere floating around the internet of Mickey Rourke running his fingers through my hair, because the whole thing was videoed as well. And so yeah, now for posterity, I've got pictures of Mickey Rourke's pee-stained hands caressing my scalp, and it's something that's going to keep me up tonight.
And why is that not your picture on the old internets?
I think it was for a couple of seconds, and then it was just it was a painful memory which I chose to put
But you
behind
get benefits with your job. If you get hepatitis, like, you know, they can give you a new liver. You're fine.
At the time, I did not. Like I said, I really wasn't that up in the game. I was all about sort of like buying the catastrophe insurance for like $63 a month, to where if I broke my leg, it would only cost me $15,000 to get a cast as opposed to the full $25,000. So, yeah, it was an interesting time in my life that I reflect back on not fondly, but I treat it as a learning experience. Funkhauser, how much time do we have left? Do we have time to do some news?
We got like 6 or 7 minutes. Sure. You want to do
we're
some
kind
news?
of about face today. Let's about face today. Funkhauser, read the news. Sam and I will react to it.
Fine. The Powerball jackpot is at $1.5 billion.
Did you buy a Powerball ticket, Sam?
No, I haven't yet, because if I win, it's just a guaranteed death, right?
No,
no.
I'm going to win. So if I win, I won't see you tomorrow.
No,
Bye.
like, they all died. Yeah, but it's a known fact that all lottery winners just die terrible deaths, penniless. Yeah. So
do they really?
A lot of them do. Yeah, quite a lot. And so I'm just wondering if a Powerball, if this jackpot's $1.5 billion, are they just going to die that much faster because it's so much money that they're just not going to be found dead in Vegas with like a pile of coke and a bunch of, you know, hookers or something, like, by the next day?
I agree with you that they might meet an early demise, but to blow through $1.5 billion, which is still something like, what, $800 million by the time you take it home? To wind up penniless after that would really take some doing. I mean, like, I was thinking about it. The only way to make that kind of money, the only other way to make that kind of money for doing nothing is to be born to Donald Trump's parents. Go on.
President Obama gave his final State of the Union address last night.
Yep. Watched it.
Yeah, I DVR'd it. We've gone over that, Funk.
Yeah.
Have you not been listening to the show?
Are we doing a show today? Oh.
A vague approximation thereof. All the networks carried it, apparently. Fox being the only network that used a laugh track, but nevertheless, it was on every TV channel.
It really punched it up, though. I liked it.
The Paul Ryan, you know, sort of like, yeah, exactly. Paul Ryan practicing his series of stoic expressions behind Obama was pretty much my favorite part. Like, that guy has that star quality we're talking about. Couldn't take my eyes off of him. It was one of the most painfully awkward things I've ever seen, I think. Anyways, go on.
Homophobic Kentucky clerk Kim Davis attended the State of the Union.
Only after she was assured that it wasn't the State of the Union of two gay people. Can anybody just get into the State of the Union address? Like, how is she attending it? Like, is this a thing now? Is she like a figurehead for something that now gets preferential treatment in this world? Because if she is, I'm out. But like, why was she there? Can anyone go?
No, you have to get invited, but a Christian organization that she's a part of lobbied a congressman's staff on her behalf for a ticket, and the congressman claims he didn't find out until the last minute, until after he questioned his staff, after the Huffington Post questioned him, but they got the ticket and brought her along.
That was nice of him.
Yeah.
Go on. What else?
The White House now has an account on Snapchat. Ooh.
20 years too late, lamented Bill Clinton.
Anthony Weiner's going to be manning it.
Oh, my God. Have you, you have Snapchat, right, Funk?
Do I have Snapchat? No, I don't
Yeah.
have Snapchat. No, I
Sam?
did for a while, but meh.
Nah.
Only when I date teenagers.
Right. Yeah. I got it, and it was immediately bought by, or like, I think Facebook
You don't really
offered
date teenagers, do you, Sam? That's not a thing you do you? I mean, maybe.
Like 19?
Oh, okay, 19. Okay. That's good then.
Wow, you're creepy.
I was just...
Don't drive near any schools.
That's why I don't have Snapchat, because it's first day of school.
Could I sit in a different studio? Now I know why you're not... You're hundreds of miles away from the funk. Jeez. I don't feel comfortable in here.
You know, Snapchat was an interesting one because when it first came out, like I resisted all forms of social media for the longest time possible. And then when it became very clear that it was part of my job, I was like, fine. The moment something comes out, I get it, just in case it turns into the next Twitter. And I got Snapchat, and everyone was like, this will never be anything. I was like, well, somebody just offered to buy it for $5 billion. I think it's going to stick around, and they're going to find commercial applications of it. It'll be more than just teenagers sexting. But like, I got on Snapchat, and it's a disappointing window into how terribly boring most people are. Like, the vast majority of the Snapchats I get are in bed, what they're watching on television. They're like Netflixing the hell out of The Office. I'm just like, really? And you felt it necessary to share this with people? Or stuck in traffic? Or the one thing that I get on a semi-regular basis that is kind of fun but leads me to believe people are going to die grisly automobile deaths is when I'm talking on the radio, people will Snapchat it and send it to me. I'm like, I'm aware of what I just said. I'm me, but that is kind of nifty to get a window into other people's worlds and know what they're doing as they listen. Thank you so much for you listening and for being part of our radio family. We will be back tomorrow. We will do this all over again. And a very big thank you to super storyteller Sam Firestein for sharing his story of David Bowie with us. Have an awesome one. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Funkhauser.